when you hit buy on your phone, there is this almost invisible expectation of magic. You click a button and
And like 2 days later, a physical object just appears on your doorstep.
exactly.
Yeah.
But behind that magic is a very human reality. I mean, there is someone sitting behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound truck, navigating a supply chain that has been, well, quietly going through an absolute workforce crisis.
Yeah, crisis is definitely the right word for it.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a massive stack of 2026 industry reports, carrier surveys, and retention studies from the North American trucking industry. And our mission today is to completely dismantle a narrative that you've probably heard endlessly in the broader business news.
The famous driver shortage.
That's right, that there's a driver shortage.
Yeah.
We're going to look at why that narrative is actually a myth, and why the real problem, the one actually bankrupting carriers, is a massive, incredibly expensive, leaky bucket of driver retention.
It really is a fascinating shift in how we understand labor deployment right now. Because when you look at the raw data coming out of these 2026 reports, the most successful companies in this space, they are no longer just blindly throwing money at recruitment.
Like, they aren't just running those massive ad campaigns anymore.
Right, exactly. They aren't just trying to get bodies in seats. Instead, they're fundamentally redesigning their entire operational infrastructure to, keep the people they already have.
Wow.
Yeah, the pivot is very clear. Recruitment is treating the symptom, but retention is curing the disease.
And whether you are managing a team or running a business yourself, or, you're just curious about how the supply chain actually delivers your goods, there is a literal masterclass in workforce management hidden inside these trucking reports.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's start with the sheer financial reality of this leaky bucket, because the numbers here, they basically dictate the entire strategy. Large truckload carriers are just bleeding talent. They're seeing annual turnover rates sitting consistently between 72% and 95%.
Which is just a staggering statistic when you pause to think about it.
Right. Just conceptualize that for a second.
Yeah.
You are essentially replacing your entire workforce every 12 to 14 months.
And the financial drag of that churn is what's finally forcing the industry to abandon its old playbook. I mean, the data shows that replacing just one single driver costs a fleet anywhere from $6,500 on the low end to upwards of $20,000.
Wait, $20,000 for one driver?
Yeah. And that's not just like a soft HR number either. That factors in the digital marketing spend to find them, the background screening, the onboarding overhead, the physical training.
A whole process.
Exactly. And crucially, the lost productivity and revenue, while that asset, the truck itself just sits unutilized against a fence.
Yeah, I'm making zero money.
Right. So when you apply those unit economics to a fleet of 1,000 trucks, those turnover costs are literally vaporizing millions in operating capital every single year.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because relying on recruitment in that environment is, well, it's pure financial self-sabotage.
It really is.
You are actively funding your own inefficiency. It's like spending thousands of dollars to fill a bathtub without plugging the drain.
That is a perfect analogy. You're just watching the water pour out.
Exactly. But looking at the timeline of these reports, why is this hitting a fever pitch right now, specifically in 2026? Because the industry has, always had a degree of churn.
What's fascinating here is the collision of a demographic cliff and some profound shifts in market psychology. So first, we have the aging workforce reality.
Right.
The average truck driver is squarely in their mid-50s. So your highly experienced, million-mile safe drivers are naturally retiring out of the system.
And I'm guessing the younger generations aren't exactly lining up to take those jobs.
Exactly. Younger workers simply aren't entering long-haul trucking fast enough to replace them. The traditional road warrior lifestyle, being away from home for 3 weeks at a time, it just doesn't align with the expectations of the incoming workforce.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that anymore.
No. But the real accelerator to this crisis was the period between 2024 and 2026. The freight market went through just extreme volatility.
Oh, right, the boom and bust cycle.
Yeah, we saw wildly inconsistent spot rates, fluctuating miles, and this massive operational pressure that just got pushed straight down to the driver level. That created a deep structural anxiety within the workforce.
So they got burned.
Completely. Drivers have been scarred by that instability, which means they are universally prioritizing one thing above all else right now, and that's predictability.
Which perfectly explains the stark contrast we see in the LTL and private fleet data.
Yes, exactly.
Because while the long-haul truckload side is sitting at that crazy 72% to 95% turnover mark, LTL, which is less than truckload and private fleets, are hovering way down at like 10% to 18%.
Right, a massive difference.
Because those operational models naturally offer predictability. I mean, a driver knows their route, they know their stops, and crucially, they know what night they're going to sleep in their own bed.
Precisely. The day-to-day human experience of the job is entirely overriding the traditional financial promises of the job.
Okay, so if predictability is the required baseline to keep someone in the seat, we have to look at what exactly introduces chaos. Like, what are the friction points driving someone to walk away from a job they just spent 2 months training for?
Well, looking at the carrier surveys, the top reasons for quitting are pretty consistent across the board. It's poor home time, unpredictable pay, broken equipment, and strained dispatcher relationships.
I want to zero in on the pay aspect really quick because it totally subverts the standard corporate reflex. The reports highlight that drivers value pay predictability, like having a guaranteed weekly minimum, almost as much as they value top-tier mileage rates.
Which is wild, right?
It is. There's this brilliant insight in here from Leah Miller at TriMag Transportation. She explicitly states that massive hiring bonuses have lost their resonance entirely. The human-to-human connection is the deciding factor now.
Yeah, she nailed that.
Because throwing a $10,000 sign-on bonus at someone doesn't fix a broken operational model. It just attracts job hoppers who will leave the second the payout clears.
Wait, companies always assume people just want more money. You're saying throwing a giant sign-on bonus at a driver actually fails to keep them?
It completely fails. In fact, it creates an incredibly toxic incentive structure. The data backs her up entirely on this. Carriers paying the highest sign-on bonuses often run the absolute highest turnover rates.
Wow, so they're just paying people to leave eventually.
Basically, it creates a culture of bonus chasing without addressing why the driver is actually miserable on a Tuesday afternoon. Pay has simply become table stakes.
Right. You have to pay fairly, obviously.
You obviously have to compensate people fairly to get them in the door, yeah, but the operational experience is the actual retention mechanism. If the day-to-day reality of the job is fundamentally disrespectful of their time, no bonus is going to keep them.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And this brings us to one of the sharpest insights from the 2026 data. Drivers leave managers before they leave companies. Oh, that is such a universal truth in workforce management. But it plays out in a very specific way in the cab, doesn't it? I mean, the dispatcher is the absolute center of gravity for a driver.
They really are.
They are the face, the voice, and the literal gatekeeper of that driver's earning potential.
Exactly. Imagine you are 500 miles from home, right? And you hit a severe delay, say unexpected detention time at a receiving facility. You're sitting at a dock for 4 hours, burning your hours of service clock.
Which means you're not turning miles.
Right. You're not turning miles, and therefore you are not getting paid. If your dispatcher is dismissive of that reality or treats your lost time as just an acceptable externality, the relationship fractures immediately.
I'd be furious.
Anyone would be. That's why the most progressive fleets in these reports are completely overhauling how they manage their managers. They are now actively evaluating dispatchers based on their driver retention rates, not just their fleet utilization metrics.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, if your board of drivers consistently quits, that is a data point on your management style. Consequently, we are seeing major investments in EQ, emotional intelligence, and conflict de-escalation training for dispatchers.
It's shifting them from just being freight routers to being actual people managers.
Yeah.
But, you know, the manager on the phone is really only half the equation. The other half is the machinery itself.
Yes, the technology expectation gap.
Exactly. The sources detail this massive gap. In 2026, technology either enables a driver or it actively drives them out of the industry. The administrative burden is a perfect example of this.
It really is.
In legacy fleets, drivers are still bleeding up to 45 minutes a day dealing with administrative friction. You know, clunky workflows, physical bills of lading, manual gate checks.
Which is just agonizing when you just want to drive.
Right. And high-retention fleets have aggressively digitized that workflow, cutting the admin burden down to under 8 minutes using streamlined mobile tools.
Because you are eliminating the micro-frustrations that compound over a 70-hour work week. But where technology fundamentally alters the retention math is in the physical equipment itself.
The trucks.
The trucks. The American Trucking Association's survey data shows that 94% of drivers cite equipment reliability as a top 3 factor in fleet selection.
Well, nobody wants to be broken down on the shoulder of I-80 in January.
Exactly, and this has driven the widespread adoption of the closed-loop maintenance strategy. Fleets are leveraging AI and Internet of Things sensors to move entirely from reactive to predictive maintenance.
So they fix it before it breaks.
Precisely. By reading the continuous data from the engine, things like vibration profiles, fluid viscosity, microfluctuations in temperature, they can predict a component failure before it happens.
That's amazing.
It really is.
Oh,
It
yeah.
reduces unplanned breakdowns by up to 68%.
Which is incredible on a pure efficiency level. I mean, if we think about closed-loop maintenance, it's essentially giving the truck a central nervous system. When the truck feels pain, say, an alternator starting to degrade, it instantly sends a signal to the fleet's brain, the maintenance software.
Right.
And then the software reroutes the driver to a terminal to replace the part before it snaps. But the sources also point out that closed loop isn't just about the sensors. It's about the communication loop with the human.
Yes, that is vital.
Because if a driver logs a safety defect on their pre-trip inspection and the maintenance team doesn't action it for 3 days, the implicit message is that the driver's safety is secondary to the freight. That destroys trust faster than almost anything else.
Oh, completely.
I mean, if a driver reports a safety defect and nothing happens, it's exactly like telling your landlord the roof is caving in and getting left on red.
Yeah.
Of course you'd move out.
That is exactly what it feels like. If we connect this to the bigger picture, all of this technological implementation has to be filtered through the lens of trust. Technology must serve the worker, not surveil them.
Right.
We see this tension most clearly in how fleets handle AI safety coaching and dash cams. Historically, drivers have aggressively fled companies where safety scoring felt like an arbitrary, punitive gotcha system.
Like Big Brother just watching them.
Exactly. But platforms like Motive and Oxmate have flipped the script by shifting to transparent scorecards. They are giving the driver direct access to their own safety data, the video context of heartbreaking events, and their peer benchmarked improvement trajectory.
So they can actually see what management sees.
Right. And the data is striking. Drivers who have direct, transparent access to their own performance metrics exhibit a 34% lower turnover rate.
34%.
Ah.
That is a massive operational advantage just from changing the permission settings on the data.
Yeah.
You are moving from a dynamic of, Big Brother is monitoring your mistakes to here is a professional dashboard for you to manage your own career development.
It changes the entire relationship.
And we even see this playing out with dual-facing cameras, which have been a notoriously contentious issue in the cab.
Oh, they have been. But the context of their use dictates the retention outcome. When fleets utilize dual-facing cameras primarily to exonerate drivers, like to definitively prove they were entirely focused on the road when a passenger vehicle cut them off, a trust crystallizes very quickly.
Because it proves they weren't at fault.
Exactly. The technology is no longer a liability, it becomes the driver's strongest advocate. Motive's aggregate data actually shows a 3% increase in retention over 75 weeks in fleets deploying dual-facing cameras compared to those without them, entirely driven by that exoneration factor.
The technology literally has their back. It's actively protecting their CDL. So, okay, we can fix the truck, we can optimize the dispatchers, and we can build trust through transparent data. But none of that solves the physical reality of the job, right?
Right.
You are still sitting alone in a box for thousands of miles.
Yeah, the isolation is real.
How do fleets address the human isolation and the lack of visible career progression? This takes us into the structural and cultural systems detailed in the reports, starting with the most dangerous period for any carrier, which is the onboarding phase.
Oh, yeah.
The data shows a brutal reality. 35% of all new hires quit within their first 90 days.
That 90-day window is the ultimate stress test of your operational culture. Because remember, you have just spent up to $20,000 acquiring this driver. If they walk out in month 2, it is a total loss.
Which is why the Canadian case study in these reports is so compelling. Care and Transportation Systems out of Canada completely overhauled their approach, creating a methodology they literally trademarked as Karenization.
It's a brilliant program.
It is. They analyzed their exit interviews and realized their retention was incredibly stable after a driver hit the 1-year mark, but they were hemorrhaging people at 3 and 6 months. So to stop the bleeding, they heavily fortified those first 90 days.
And we aren't talking about like a 3-day PowerPoint marathon in a windowless room.
Yeah, not at all. They developed gamified, scenario-based training tailored to individual learning styles.
Mm.
It's phased integration. You are
Hmm.
gradually exposing the driver to the specific stresses of the job, checking in constantly and building competence rather than just, you know, throwing them to the wolves.
And the Canadian operating environment forces a much deeper level of operational empathy, too. You are dealing with incredibly hostile winter weather systems, massive remote geographies, and complex regulatory environments across different provinces.
Yeah, driving there is no joke.
But perhaps most importantly, the Canadian trucking sector is heavily reliant on immigrant workforce pipelines. You have a huge influx of newcomer drivers.
Hmm.
A successful retention strategy in that context cannot just be about teaching someone how to shift gears. It requires robust language support, cultural integration tools, and community settlement assistance. They are taking a profoundly human-centric approach to what has historically been managed as a purely industrial, mechanical job.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it fundamentally alters the social fabric of the job. The mentorship programs.
Oh, the mentor pay structure. Yeah.
Yes. Progressive fleets are literally paying their highly experienced veteran drivers a premium, like specialized retention bonuses, elevated leadership pay, specifically to act as mentors to these newcomers.
It's so smart.
They are formally pairing a 20-year safe driver with a first-year recruit. It turns an inherently solitary profession into a networked community. You have someone to call when you're trying to chain up tires on a mountain pass for the first time.
Which is a direct structural countermeasure against the burnout and mental health crisis prevalent in long-haul driving. The compounding stressors are severe. Chronic isolation, circadian rhythm disruptions, sustained family separation.
It takes a toll.
A huge toll. Addressing this is why we are seeing a total normalization of driver wellness programs in 2026. Telehealth services customized for life on the road, proactive mental health counseling, specialized sleep apnea support. These are no longer viewed as soft HR perks.
Right, they're essential.
They are core operational retention strategies because they mathematically correlate to reduced accident rates and lower absenteeism.
And it creates a runway for the driver, which ties directly into the Grow Your Own Career Pathing initiatives highlighted in the sources. The industry is realizing that treating driving as a dead-end execution role is a recipe for churn.
Yeah, people need to see a future.
So fleets are building actual bridges. They're taking top-performing warehouse workers and putting them through fully paid internal CDL academies. And through programs like the Next Gen Trucking Career Catalyst Awards, we are seeing companies heavily recognized for successfully transitioning drivers out of the cab and into management, safety, or executive roles.
Showing them they have options.
Exactly. The message is clear. You can build a multi-decade career here without having to hold a steering wheel until you retire.
They are completely personalizing the trajectory of the worker. It is no longer a one-size-fits-all model. Some drivers absolutely want to transition into office leadership. Others want to master the craft and move into highly specialized freight.
Like what kind of freight?
Things like complex oil field logistics, chemical tankers, or heavy haul oversized loads. Those roles demand a much higher degree of technical skill, but they pay significantly higher premiums. And interestingly, they consistently retain drivers better because of that intense specialization and elite compensation. The engagement is simply deeper.
So what does this all mean? If we synthesize this entire stack of 2026 data for you, the underlying thesis is unequivocal. Retention is the new recruitment. The successful fleets have realized that the four pillars of maintaining a highly productive workforce are predictable miles, predictable pay, highly reliable equipment, and transparent communication.
It really comes down to those four things.
It does. If you manage human beings in any capacity, in any industry, the lesson from the freight sector is incredibly sharp. Operational consistency and systemic fundamental respect for your workers' time will outperform a flashy sign-on bonus every single time.
Absolutely. And as we project these current strategies into the future, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've discussed how AI and IoT sensors are currently tracking engine vibrations to predict a mechanical breakdown with 68% accuracy before it happens.
Right.
And we know fleets are now heavily analyzing dispatcher-driver communication metrics. This raises an important question regarding the future of workforce management. How long until these same predictive analytics are used to forecast the exact day an employee is going to quit?
Oh, wow.
And if an algorithm flags a high flight risk and automatically dispatches a pre-programmed empathy intervention task to a manager, Does that actually build the authentic human connection these workers crave, or does the manufactured nature of it push them even further away?
That is a phenomenal tension to consider. If the empathy is triggered by a predictive algorithm, does the human intent behind it still resonate? Something to think about as analytics integrate deeper into how we manage people. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the realities of the modern supply chain. Keep asking questions, keep challenging those accepted industry narratives, and we will catch you on the next one.